Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hi, this is Scott Cosenza for Liberty Nation TV, and this is a companion piece to my printed piece on LibertyNation.com called The Legality and Liability of the Stormy Daniels Liaison. And in that piece, I detail legal claims that Stormy Daniels and her attorney make trying to get Donald Trump in court to be deposed and to have the confidentiality agreement that Mr. Trump and Ms. Daniels engaged in, for which he was paid $130,000, to be declared null and void. And I thought it would be interesting to take a look at their statements. Ms. Daniels and Mr. Avenatti were both interviewed on 60 Minutes, and see how those statements comport with the evidence, and whether we can draw any inferences as to their motivations and veracity.
In college, in law school, you did opposition research for Democratic political operative Rahm Emanuel. Some people looking at that will say you're politically motivated.
I haven't done anything in politics in over 20 years.
But this is not the usual case you take on. You are a former Democratic operative, and you're talking about deposing the president. That sounds political.
No, it sounds righteous.
How so?
Because my client is credible. She's telling the truth.
How do we know you're telling the truth?
Because I have no reason to lie. I'm opening myself up for, possible danger and definitely a whole lot of shit.
But, there is a potential upside, financial upside. Maybe somebody will want you to write a book. Maybe, you can go on a bigger tour and make more money dancing.
That's a lot of ifs. I could also get shunned. I could automatically be alienating half of my fan base right at this very moment.
Righteous and credible, huh? Okay, well, I suppose if bringing down Donald Trump is the goal, then for some folks, that is indeed a righteous cause. As for the credibility issue, Ms. Daniels, she comes across to me as credible when she discusses her allegations that she did have a one-time affair with Donald Trump. But what about the motivation for her wanting to have this agreement declared a non-agreement? She says that there are ifs and buts, it sounds like, for the idea that this may make her even more money. I think it's now fair to call that statement a flat-out lie, given what we know about the kind of bump in bookings and publicity that Ms. Daniels has seen since these allegations have gone wide. And let's recall that the whole point of the action from her perspective against Mr. Trump is to get her to be able to do more press, sell more stories, do more scenes in which she portrays their relationship. But don't take my word for it. Let's take a look at what adult star Lisa Ann, who has made a fortune playing Sarah Palin, has to say about what she and Ms. Daniels spoke about recently.
Can she monetize this? There has to be a way for her to monetize it.
She already is.
How?
So she's already signed over. She's gone from Wicked, and now she's with Manwin, which is Brazzers, Pornhub, all these guys. So she's directing and shooting. So she'll be directing content. She'll probably be putting herself in a movie or two. She's on the road feature dancing, just crushing it.
Oh, yeah.
Crushing it and crushing it.
This is what we were talking about before you got here, and you would be the perfect person because you, like when you did Nailin' Palin, you got to a whole nother level.
It was the greatest ever.
Lisa was the porn version of Sarah Palin.
Yes. Changed my life.
Like, can you imagine if Stormy now comes out with the porn that people want to see, which is the Trump
When this first
parody.
happened, I reached out to Stormy and we had a beautiful conversation. And the things that I wanted to address with her is, I know that she has a daughter, and I know that these things aren't easy when they come this close to your home. But it also should motivate you more. This is life-changing money. This is not just making money. This is life-changing money. I said, just go get it hard, and then you pick your family up and you move somewhere and you just kind of tuck yourself back in again. But for now, you got to get it. And
take the money, sure.
Yeah.
Let's see what else 60 Minutes had to ask Mr. Avenatti.
Michael Cohen had said, look, this had nothing to do with the election. He would have made this agreement months before.
So why didn't he? It just slipped his mind? It's just a coincidence that in the waning days of the campaign, he thought to himself, oh, I know I've been thinking about this for years. Perhaps now is a good time to get that NDA executed with Stormy Daniels.
So Mr. Avenatti, with his sly smile, makes it out like it's preposterous. Why would Ms. Daniels and Mr. Trump come to an agreement before the election if it wasn't completely about the election? What would, you know, it's just a joke, right, to even suggest it. Well, according to their own complaint, it's not a joke. According to the complaint that Mr. Avenatti filed in court, this is the lawsuit. It says that within days of the publication of the Access Hollywood tape, after a number of other women came forth to sell their stories, Ms. Clifford, that's Ms. Daniels' real name, Ms. Clifford likewise sought to share details concerning her relationship and encounters with Mr. Trump with various media outlets. Now, share the details with various media outlets is code for wants to sell her story to the highest bidder. That's what her sharing consisted of. And then we learn that as a result of her efforts aimed at publicly disclosing her story, that's sales pitches is another word to say, efforts aimed at publicly disclosing it. She didn't just put up a video on YouTube like I'm doing now with this, like anybody can do. No. She was looking for bids to sell her story. That her plans came to the attention of Mr. Trump and his campaign, including Mr. Cohen, his attorney. So there was a bidding situation. The Trump organization, Mr. Trump put in his bid, which was $130,000 for Ms. Daniels to just not speak publicly of their liaison and then private facts known to her because of the time they spent together. She decided to take the money. We know one thing is for sure, though. Ms. Daniels is the one who controlled the calendar with this situation. She's the one who started pitching her story and looking for bidders. And that's what she achieved. She got a bidder in the form of Donald Trump. Mr. Avenatti goes on in his complaint with some language that's quite rich. He says that Mr. Cohen aggressively sought to silence Ms. Clifford as part of an effort to avoid her telling the truth. And the aggressively sought to silence just included opening up his checkbook to the tune of $130,000. The choice of language there is interesting. I think it's designed purposefully to mislead and direct people to think that there was some kind of untoward or inappropriate or thuggish-like behavior on behalf of Mr. Cohen, when in fact all there is somebody asking for money and somebody providing that money. It's difficult to see how that's an issue, except for now after the fact, when you're somebody who doesn't like Donald Trump. Another thing that Mr. Avenatti does in terms of language is he calls the agreement a hush agreement. Why is it a hush agreement? Well, it's just a non-disclosure agreement or confidentiality agreement. There's no term in the law called a hush agreement. This is something that he's done in order to make it sound better, perhaps, when he gets to talk about it on news programs or something. But it is, it's telling, and it tells me that that he's playing a game for media attention, not about being a serious litigant. And in fact, the very nature of the recitation of the Access Hollywood tapes, listed again in the complaint, discussing Mr. Trump's lewd statements in detail. Those are not points that are important for this litigation. In fact, they're extraneous and should not be included. They suggest that Mr. Avenatti is using this litigation not as it appropriately should be to settle some actual dispute or controversy, but merely to denigrate Mr. Trump and cause him frustration and embarrassment, which he certainly has been successful in doing so far.
Stormy Daniels did sign the agreement. She got $130,000. Isn't she welching on a deal?
No, she's not welching on a deal because there never was a deal.
But she still took the money.
She took the money, but the fact of the matter is Mr. Trump never signed the agreement. He was obligated to sign the agreement in order for the agreement to spring into effect.
Now in federal court, the judge handling the case actually rebuked Mr. Avenatti, claiming in a footnote, or letting him know in a footnote, that this wasn't the most important case before the court, that the court had other business. And it's certainly a smackdown by a federal judge, and it speaks to his frenzied push for a deposition in this case. And again, we presume it has to do with perjury trap, perhaps commensurate with the special counsel investigation against Donald Trump, and to get it done prior to perhaps the midterm elections. So we suspect I suspect political motivations behind Mr. Avenatti's case here, and I suspect only monetary motivations behind Ms. Daniels. But the perfect storm could yield trouble for the president if he does have to sit for those depositions. We'll keep you posted here on Liberty Nation TV. It's going to be a few weeks before the responses are due in, according to the latest ruling from the federal court. So stay tuned. This is Legal Affairs Editor Scott Cosenza. Thanks.
Liberty Nation. News and commentary, minus the propaganda. LibertyNation.com.